What's up, Change the Channel podcast listeners? My name is Megan Grace, and this is another episode of Change the Channel podcast. Welcome in, party people. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I was encouraged by one of my dear friends and another podcast host, which I will link in the show notes. My friend April J, she encouraged me to share about my experience. And it's funny because this is the only episode that I've ever recorded once. And then I'm like, oh, no. Not that. I want another stab at it. I want another angle at it. I want another something at it. And I think that really just speaks to how much I'm kind of in the dark about this moment for myself. And that's actually why I want to talk about it. In human design, if you don't know about human design, please send me a message. We can chat about it. It can be so deeply and profoundly life-changing to learn these parts and pieces of yourself. And as I was talking to another dear friend of mine, brilliant mind, amazing actress, we did a podcast episode together, actually, Amanda. We were looking at some of our gates, and one of my gates in human design is the gate of realizations, or essentially, it's like the other end of the gate or of the channel. One of them's like asking questions, the other's finding answers. And my defined space is about finding answers. And so I love to come to podcast topics with answers. And part of why I want to bring this to the forefront is because I believe that my experience is not uncommon. And part of why I'm feeling so uncomfortable in it is because of how little answers I feel like I have regularly. And this is called Welcome to the 40's Club. Welcome to a new era. Welcome to being in your 40s. And like the first episode, when I was recording it, I kind of was thinking like, oh, I want to do explain why it feels so confusing for me, coming from, a family that wasn't really open about talking about the female body and the cycles and things that it goes through. And I think my mom really struggled with a lot of that stuff. And so what I'm thinking is, the reason why this podcast needs to happen is because we, as those of us that are traveling this human journey, maybe a little bit in front of those, especially in their 30s or 20s, but not quite into, the wise ages of the silver-haired wise ones among us. There's this middle in between. And the middle in between, I think, feels, at least to me, a bit like walking around in a dark cave, feeling like there should be flashlights, feeling like some of my old ways of doing things should work, and feeling just this the newness and the freshness of essentially being the first day of the 7th grade in the cafeteria. Like, where do I sit? Do I like what I'm wearing? Why is my hair this way? One thing I'm noticing is my chin hairs and how they've just become sort of this thing. My mom and I used to laugh that we're like, someone loves you if they are close enough to you to be able to pluck your chin hairs, or at least tell you when they're growing long. Yeah, no one really told me that chin hairs were going to start just being a whole thing in your 40s. And I also while we're getting into this topic. This podcast, I feel like might be a little bit all over the place, but that'll give you also some of the insight into what this brain space is like. But I do want to say, as I start talking about this, I'm going to talk about my personal experience with things like hormones, my point of view with my body, my interaction with time and with my community, and what I'm leaning in towards and what I want. It's going to be very personal, and I am a massage therapist, so I know some parts about the body, but I'm not qualified to give medical advice, nor am I saying that my experience is going to be the same for everyone. But I do feel like there's a gap in the conversation around entering this very sacred and special and kind of confusing time that I feel like deserves the women that are coming up in like their 30s and 20s, and even the babies among us deserve to have a world where their cycles and changes and evolutions of being a woman is talked about and embodied by those that are older than them in a way that feels comfortable to talk about. Because one thing I'm learning is it feels like the generation before us was very big about, button up, nothing to see here. I'm just going to be tough. I'm going to handle it. And I've noticed in my mom's friends and my mom, and there's a lot of health things that are happening to these women because they've essentially swallowed a lot of their own experience. And I was recently around a friend of mine's mom that I was so in awe of her bravery, because she's currently in a space of being like, I'm going to be me. I'm not going to move into being anything other than who I am, and holding that frequency. And I was like, wow, this is how change happens. This is how we can like get back to a feeling of belonging still, even as we're outgrowing the parts of ourselves that we knew. So as this is my birthday month too, so I am 40, but on my way to 41. And I am a person that never really categorized age as a thing. If you know me, I don't understand time very well either. I'm more with whoever I'm with, and I'm just with you until we're not doing a thing anymore. But age, I remember being like, I'm going to be excited about every age. I'm going to be like nice to myself. I'm not going to fall to any of these pitfalls, any of this stuff. Like, I remember watching my mom turn 40, and like, it was back in the day when they had sheet cakes with like black flowers on them and like would say over the hill. And it was like this weird sentence, almost like, okay, well now you're old, And I think that with women, especially, it's this undertone of like, you're entering like maybe, people have various windows of fertility, but it's kind of getting into that question of like, what do I feel about babies? Are babies going to be a part of my life? Am I going to have the option to have them? Do I want the option to have them? All of that. It's like, it's moving out of, kind of a biological era and into a new one that is filled with so many questions, more questions and less answers. I also recently was like, I've turned 40 and I have been on birth control most of my life. Small pockets were not, and life got a little interesting during those pockets. And so the narrative that I'd kind of just swallowed and was holding within my body is that like, my fertility is something to fear, and my ability to have babies is something to like keep at bay. And Also, my cycle, bleeding, is something that's disgusting and no one wants to talk about it and they don't want to deal with it. And like, so I spent the better part of my 20s, and some of my 30s either having an IUD just so I'm like, okay, I just don't even want this to be a question or a thing. Or in my 20s, I experimented with different types of birth control. And sometimes I would even just like take a couple pills to prolong not having a period. And then I'd probably forget. And then I would, take a couple extra. Basically, I was trying to be my own little chemist, which for the whole sole purpose of dulling my natural cycle of being able to release things that are around, like that my body's just gathered naturally. And it's funny because even as I'm talking to you about it, I can feel how new this is for me, this philosophy, and being around other women that speak freely about their bleed and about their hormones is so new to me at even age 40. And so I come to you humbly in my newness, because there's a good chance that there are other people that are listening that also are feeling kind of that newness. And this space of being between two things, right? It's like, I know what it's like to be younger and able and enthusiastic about things. Like, I currently live in a house with, I'm 40, my other housemate's in her early 30s, and then I have two other housemates that are in their early 20s. And I look at sometimes and I'm like, how the hell do they have so much energy to be running around everywhere? Like, there's all kinds of stuff constantly happening, and like the, fascination with, certain topics and the drive to make change and to do all of this. And I'm like, what is wrong with me that I don't feel that? Like that I kind of feel like I'm needing to allocate my emotional tokens differently. Like I'm needing to budget. Whereas before I was that girl that like kept a different kind of pair of shoes. Like my whole back seat was filled with clothes and shoes, because if a person was like, hey, do you want to go here? I just knew that if I had the right clothes and shoes, I could say yes and just run to it. And like my 30s, a lot of it was like being super fascinated with social dancing and being, at the studio all the time, and like, going to socials and being out till like, 2, 3 in the morning, like living my life, doing all of that. And like, there's parts of me that still love that. But now I'm entering this era where I'm like, my energy has just shifted and I'm not choosing it. It's how I feel. It's this innate, the sacral yes or no. I'm hearing so many more no's than I ever have before. And that's confusing. And I have to say that like, there's this air of judgment that I have with myself sometimes where I'm like, why can't I do more? Why don't I want to do more? I also am realizing too that sometimes even working out or moving around, like feeling comfortable or even oriented in my body feels so different. Like I look in the mirror and I'm like, I've never looked like this before. I look at my clothes and I'm like, who wore these? And a lot of my clothes are like, they were gifted to me, or they were kind of like hand-me-downs, or they were the stuff that I wore when I was doing a lot of social dancing. And I'm like, who am I outside of this? Who am I outside of my work clothes? Do I, as I'm scrolling Amazon or other things, I'm looking at styles and I'm like, which style is me? Because my body feels so foreign to me. I also just recently decided, because I am in my 40s, and after having kind of so much of my life being on birth control, I was like, I realized I didn't actually even know my inner cycle at all. I didn't know what times in my month I was going to be more naturally fueled with energy and which ones I was going to be desiring to be more inward and, which I was going to feel more desire, which I was going to feel more sexy and more open. And other times, all of that, it just felt like these artificial hormones had sort of put earmuffs on my internal wisdom. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know how to say my best yeses and my best nos because so much of it feels muted. And so I decided to take my IUD out and allow my body to just, tell me who she is again, to get to know her again. And I will say that I'm starting to nickname it Reddit MD because I feel like like so many things happen to us, especially as women in our bodies. And it's like, like doctors will say things like, well, you'll probably experience some changes. We're curious what they'll be. Or you may experience this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, great. That just sounds like the human experience. It'll be fine. It was like hitting a brick wall at 100 miles an hour when my body all of a sudden realized that she needed to produce her own progesterone. And it was like popping a cork on a bottle of all of these emotions and all of this sensation and all of this feeling that had been sort of stopped up in my uterus since having this IUD in 2018. And I really struggled. And I learned through the mighty Reddit MD that it's called the Mirena crash, which is where, your body's gotten used to not having to produce progesterone. So even in like a very low dose, I'm a super sensitive person to all types of medication. My body had just kind of gone on like autopilot, like, all right, girl, you got this. No worries. I'll be over here. And so I would have these swells of emotion, deep feelings of sadness, like sobbing on the freeway, and shout out to my friend, April J, the one that was like, you know what, maybe talk about your experience because, I just messaged her and I was like, this come down is fucking rough. Like, what? And she was like, yeah, I hear you. What is your experience? And that is what we need, right? We need to have people that we feel safe being like, I feel unglued. I don't feel like I have any answers. I feel like I'm in as big of a mystery as anyone about this body that's mine. And yet I'm supposed to be taking really good care of her. It's all kind of nuts. And so, yeah, that come down from the IUD, I'm still in sort of the cycle of getting back into understanding myself. And part of that I decided was I was going to finally educate myself on what the hormones were doing and what the hormones were doing for me, not just like in generality. And so the first thing I did was get a basal thermometer, temp thermometer, which is like kind of interesting. You take your temperature every morning. I put it in an app because now I'm a mini scientist, but less in the world of giving myself random doses of medication and more in the like, what's going on in there, And so I got the thermometer and I've just been taking my temperature, and it tells you your temperature with like 2 decimal point places afterwards, and it will show subtle dips and spikes. I noticed that my temperature dips really low when I'm traveling, or it raises really high in certain spaces when I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, or so I've been tracking now things like my mood and my cervical mucus and my temperature. And it was like all of these things were so taboo as a kid. and growing up in my family and growing up in a conservative Christian family, it was just, our experience was very much just, don't talk about that and don't bring it up. And when I would ask my mom any questions about things about being a woman, she was just profoundly uncomfortable in her skin, which taught me through her nonverbals that I should be uncomfortable in my skin. And I say that not because I want to villainize my mom, but because I think she was passed that down to her. And I think that a lot of us come from moms that didn't always know themselves or know their bodies or feel comfortable exploring that or sharing what they're feeling. We get to be the generation, I believe, that breaks that cycle. Like, I want to tell you how weird and uncomfortable this feels. I want to tell you that my brain fog is astounding. And I'm like, oh my God, is it me? Is it the planet? Is it this? Is it, do I need more coffee? But kind of this aimless feeling. And April J, again, she just is going to be getting all the props on this episode, but she was telling me that she had listened to a podcast or something about how in this time, in kind of your 40s, you don't need motivation, you need momentum. And that really, really stuck with me and struck me at the same time. I think we're making new words, but basically, a lot of the hype culture stuff of you can do it, you got this, girl, and boss babe, and this and that stuff, actually, it makes my nervous system feel really activated, and I feel fearful, and I feel more or less shut down. And so gentle motivation things or not motivation, momentum. It's the friend that says, I'll sit on the phone with you and kind of do some body doubling things while you're working on a project. Or I had another amazing friend where I was telling her, I know I'm not supposed to be living where I am, but I don't know where the next place is and I don't know how to get there yet. And she's like, totally. Well, let's go to an art shop. And so I went to an art store and got this massive, larger than life pad of paper. And she bought me these pens, and I tell you what, these pens make me feel so much more in control of my experience than trying to write, on lined paper or small books or whatever. I started coloring my dreams, the things that I do know about myself right now, the things that do still feel true, at least in this moment. And I made a to-do list, but with pretty colors, and got this deep satisfaction from crossing them off, also artistically and messy. And it was this feeling of congruence, right? When my anxiety and worry feels so big, but I'm writing about it on a piece of paper that feels so small, the two don't align. But when I'm, dream casting and calling things in and, imagining my very big and expanding life on a paper that matches it, it felt so good. And she was like, not why haven't you done this, or let's hurry up and get this, whatever. She was like, how can we get a bit of momentum for you? Just a little bit underneath, just a little bit of wind in your sails. And I could almost cry with how much that meant to me. Having friends like April, and then that was Alicia that I was talking about, and then Amanda earlier, having beautiful conversations, really has helped with the discomfort of this time, but also to start to embrace it as a new adventure. And that me explaining my unbuttoned up version of what I'm experiencing can hopefully offer other people or afford other people the opportunity to share more about their experience too. The female experience on this earth is wild, from like, from when you first start your cycle to like the fact that our hormone levels are different every single day of the month. Like we are different people every single day of the month, like being fueled by hormones differently every single day of the month. And yet we're in a society that says show up the same and consistent and, all the time, 40 hours a week, man, all this stuff. It's like, no wonder we struggle to hear what's actually going on within ourselves, because it takes so much work to get off of that, kind of conveyor belt. But that's like basically a whole other podcast. So I had my friends that were there in deep emotional support. But then the other thing that I'm finding a lot of juicy solace in is amazing wellness practitioners that are kind of nature-based and that understand what I'm going through. My friend, Carolyn Egan, I called her right away and was like, I need to schedule a consult with you because she's this brilliant herbalist. And I was like, I'm feeling this symptom and this symptom and this and this and this. And the best thing about herbs is like, I don't think that it's not so much like Western medicine where you're like, okay, this list of symptoms leads us to say that you have this pathology, this thing. When Carolyn talks to me about stuff, she's like, okay, it sounds like your liver may need some support, or, like your reproductive organs will need some support. Maybe we can give you, some like things about like helping with blood flow and circulation, moving stagnation. Like I love, love, love these words because that's what my body's experiencing, right? Like I'm not a problem because I've entered this cave without flashlights and I'm paving my own way and learning about being in my 40s. Like that's not a problem. There's just certain parts of me that are feeling more stagnant and some that are feeling more free flowing. And things like Chinese herbs and amazing practitioners like Carolyn, they get to the root of the support that your body needs. I also have this awesome, incredible acupuncturist, and she was like, okay, it just seems like we need some like overall hormone buoyancy. Like, here's another supplement. And then my women's health doctor, she's like, okay, like let's get some stuff to like help support your progesterone, your body naturally bringing progesterone back to it. And I literally started to feel like the panic was draining from my body when I started these 3 sort of regimens. And I'm so, so, so grateful. And I realized like, not everyone knows that those are even like, interventions that you could use, like thinking about using Chinese herbs or using even some more Western style herbs like maca and trying to think of the other one. But yeah, like tinctures and and then beautiful Chinese herbs that I obviously cannot pronounce. Like also acupuncture can be wildly supportive for managing and balancing these hormones, and it's natural, and it's not like taking medicine to suppress the symptoms or sensations in the body. Because I really do believe that when we take, like, this again is not to villainize medicine, like there's time and place for it. But if that becomes our go-to all the time, then we're quieting the voice that is trying to tell us what we need. Like my body is sending me signals, like my brain really, really needs support right now. Like my muscles feel really, really tight in a new way. Like I think I pulled my neck just basically turning my head or laid on it wrong or something. And it's taking a little bit more time to like bounce back. Like, my stomach area was needing some support. My moods and emotions were feeling very all over the place. And if I just went straight to a a medicinal intervention, I wouldn't be able to sit with and listen to the lessons that are coming up. So now my body knows and is learning that I will listen to her. And I realized that moving into this 40s and beyond, when there's going to be so many changes and shifts happening, like I need to know my body's baseline, and I need her to know in a deep resonant level that I will listen to her as she is changing, that I'm not going to shut her down or silence her or overlook or be embarrassed about the things that are happening. Like I want deeply to be able to hold this extended part of my belly and be like, you know what? I see you. You look very different than you've ever looked before. And I'm getting emotional about it because I grew up in a home that was told that having any kind of extended part in your belly was very bad, very not okay. And so now I'm looking at myself and going, well, what does that mean about me if that's what I'm experiencing? And so even as I'm talking, I'm holding that part of my stomach and I'm like, what if I allow her to exist? And what if I can tell myself that I'm still worthy of love and belonging and beautiful and that I'm going to be okay, even if I don't look the same that I did, the standard that I hold in my head of like, well, I look like this once. Yeah, bitch, it was when you were 20. Like your life was way different back then. Like, or, a hot girl era in like my mid 30s. God, I was like, I love this. I get to do life in this body. I used to tell people that all the time, like, body embodiment, like, get to do life in this body. Can I still say that to my body as it's aging, as there's new creases and different like red stretch marks, which I learned through another thing, like red stretch marks are a sign of like too much cortisol in your body. Like my body is sending me multiple signals that it is feeling stressed and distressed. And so, but I wasn't listening to it as much when I had interventions that were numbing that. And so now I'm like, okay, what do I do? How do I dress you so that you feel comfortable and special? I actually bought a couple dresses off of Amazon. It was just like, I want to see how I feel. I'm wearing one of the dresses while I'm recording and I'm looking down and I'm like, you look feminine and you look beautiful. And it's kind of this like blue giraffe print or something. And I'm like, okay, like you still got some fighter, some animal in you. Like this isn't where we hang up the hat. This is not the black rose cake of our mom's generation. This is embracing the 40s club and saying, my body is changing, which means I get to be actively listening. And then what would it mean if I shared with other people things I was noticing? So instead of it being right, wrong, good, bad, and or all on my own, what if I saw it as a neutral event and then was like, okay, cool. If this is not an emotionally charged event anymore, what if I just said, okay, like maybe the idea of movement, because movement used to be so medicinal for me. I loved it. And now it's like when I get started moving, it's like my head starts to feel foggy and my balance feels kind of funny. And I feel like I'm just floating proprioceptively weird. And I don't know how else to describe it. I don't know. And I don't know why that is. I don't know what is causing it. But what I do know is that my body is experiencing that. So when I look at it neutrally, when I invite myself into sacred neutrality of noticing instead of judging, that is the channel that I want to change for me and for the other women that are younger than me, or also some of the beautiful people that are in the same 40s club with me. Find me on Instagram, please. We'll put that also in the show notes. Like, I kind of want to start like a 40s club, like 40's club and chat sort of thing where like we can like laugh with each other and, about like the chin hairs that are growing and the, body shapes changing and our energy levels fluctuating and these, the existential questions that I don't know where they're coming from. It might be this time in life or it might be my age, but like is what I'm doing what I want to be doing? Am I making the biggest impact what I could? Like what needs to shift and change? I still feel like I have like youthful power within my body. It's like, okay, well, how do I want to use that? How do I want to invest in that? And yeah, so much of it is to be continued. But some things that I've learned. Number one, Chinese herbs, freaking dope. That there are supplements that you can take that will help restore your body's natural ability to bring forward, progesterone. Again, double check all of this with your doctor. But sometimes I feel like if we don't actually know the right question to ask of the doctor or a thing to bring up, then I don't know if we always get the care that we need. So things to bring up, supplements about progesterone, like moving maybe at slower paces. Chinese herbs can be really, really helpful for like that brain fog, that slow feeling, moving away from the rah motivation, let's get it, blah, 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 blah energy, which might not always feel aligned, and shifting into how can we find some momentum? Like what is making you feel like even in the smallest way, there's momentum towards the things that you want, because it feels kind of like fumbling around in the dark with your hands out in front of you at times. I'm learning that's kind of normal. That's part of the season. And I wonder if there's something to that, right? Like, what if we've been doing all of this learning and establishing ourselves, in our younger years. And what if this is like the gift of it is to come in and get kind of fresh eyes because you have to, because your body's asking you to. It's like, do I still like this? Does this still align with me? Like, I don't want to be on autopilot. I want to be really present with my life and with those around me. Am I doing that? So yeah, like and this is also great if you're maybe in your 30s and you, or 20s or, whatever age you are, or even if you're a man that's listening and you are loving a woman that is going through this very sacred and special sort of cocoon time. Like, I hope this maybe gives you a little bit of insight into how she may be feeling, because when we engender like empathy, that is when we start to build bridges, and building those bridges is going to create a different sort of legacy, I believe, for those that are coming up behind us, where they don't have to feel ashamed of changes in their body. They can ask questions, like, and we're modeling that, like, well, this is new and different and maybe is uncomfortable. It's not bad, and you're not flawed. Like, touching the parts of your body that you're like, you are changing and adapting, and it's so hard for me. I'm grieving who you once were, but I'm open to who you are going to be. And as much as I keep saying, like, I'm asking for expansion, I want to move in different directions. It's like a friend of mine was like, well, then why wouldn't your body expand to be able to hold that? Like, why are we assuming that we can walk around the world expanding and doing all this stuff, but like nothing physical will change? Like, she's like, beloved, you're asking the universe for expansion, and it's physically showing you expansion. It's we in this society that have like pathologized having a little bit of extra in your midsection, or, not being like airbrush beautiful all the time. Like, I don't have time to be airbrush beautiful. I have a lot of time to be in my natural skin, because as a woman, specifically, when you walk around embodying the essence of knowing that you are comfortable in your own skin. You are basically wearing a permission slip for the women that are around you to also, embody their own skin, like bumps and freckles and wrinkles and blemishes and scars and discoloration and all the freaking stuff that Instagram is on my ass about now with ads, like how to fix your skin and how to look this, like whatever, like, are like what hormonal, whatever the things, like all these interventions. It's like we are told in a million ways, the ways you could just make yourself a little bit better. And I'm not saying that self-improvement's not important, but what if like in this awkwardness, what if I still choose to be a stand for comfort in my own body because as other women that are around me, when they notice it, I want them to also feel comfortable in their bodies. I want them to feel expressed and expansive and curious, and like we can all be collectively in the spaces of grief and joy about what's going on, because there's a grief that I have about looking back at myself and pictures in my 30s and missing her. But then there's joy that's coming with this new chapter where I'm like, wow, I have new wisdom. I also have so many more questions. I feel so much more connected to what I want to know and getting more clear about what I want. Like, what a gift. That is what's happening right now. That is this gift of the in-between, the sort of sacred in-between. And I will tell you that I think that ages are, different people experience them differently. Also, our hormones are going to move in different directions. But what if we stop, or we change the channel of needing to still be that girl that looked like that in that picture? And what if we just honor and say, what a gift that I got to, like, so far I'm getting to experience myself as like, all the like kid ages and stages and whatever. But I also got to be and embody like the size and shape that I was in my 20s and the size and shape that I was in my 30s. And now I'm getting a different life experience in this stage as well. Like it gets to be both joy and grief. We get to find the supports that we need through, through either energy work is really supportive, having friends that can listen, of course, acupuncture, herbal care, different supplements, and also just changing the channel of needing to stay the same person we've always been. You get to grow and adapt and change, expand, and self-compassion, putting your hands literally on the parts of your body and speaking to it the way that you would a child that you adored. I'm doing that literally now as I'm holding this part of my stomach that is so not a big deal and is taking up so much space rent-free in my mind. I just want you to know that I see you and I hear you. And if you are in the 40's club, high five, sister friend, I feel you. If you are going to be experiencing it, I hope that this is at least a little bit of a roadmap to say that once you kind of hit this patch, if you start to feel any of what I'm feeling, I just want you to know that someone else experienced it too, and that there are ways to support you through that process. I'm also a resource. I'll put my Instagram link in the show notes. I'm going to put April J's podcast as well, because she's incredible and you can follow her on Instagram as well. Just one of the most supportive, loving, open people that I know. I'm so grateful for her. And then Carolyn for herbal consultations to take care of kind of the inner workings, moving from stagnation to flow, and looking at the body instead of as a pathology and more with the individual organs and supporting them. And yeah, I will also put a link to a Change the Channel chat. If you are in this Wild West space and you want space held for you, you want to feel a little bit less alone, and maybe we can come up with a small thing that could be momentum, not motivation and doing it hard, but like get a little bit of momentum under you. Like, I'm so freaking here for this. I'm going to put a couple journal prompts in the show notes as well, because this feels like a big topic. It feels important. So all that to say, don't just sit with it yourself. The legacy that I want to leave is that we get to be together in the ups and downs, the ins and outs, the upside downs and all arounds of what it means to grow as a woman and move through the woman experience on this planet. So you are loved. I love you so dearly. Let's change the channel on those mean messages of stagnation and judgment as we're navigating different times in new and different times, especially during this eclipse season. You matter, and your process is unique. Share your process with people as you feel called, the safe people around you, because we learn through each other's experiences as well. Go forth, be brave, be bold, be soft in the moments that you can. Embrace softness and suppleness. Realize that your strength is inherent, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And above all, you are deeply loved. Thank you so much for being here. This has been another episode of Change the Channel podcast.